London, England, home to everyone who is anyone, from Paddington Bear to the Queen. This great capital has stood at the forefront of industry and culture for a millennia. Best known for our dry wit and wet weather, it is really the people and history of London that make this city so great. We're bringing you a comprehensive guide of all things to see and do in London. From food and drink to unique local attractions, follow us on a journey through this capital steeped in history and discover the hidden wonders of this magnificent city. This is Discover London.
I'm Olivia Cox.
And I'm Derek O'Reilly, and together we're going to take you on a tour of London. Today we will be looking at the historical London Borough of Southwark. Situated on the south bank of the River Thames, Southwark is the historical home of the capital's entertainment industry.
It's reinventing itself and in a really lovely way.
It's a very vibrant area.
Being here feels like home.
Hey, Derek.
Our first stop is the George Inn, where we're going to meet a local historian to tell us about the area.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
And you too. Lovely to meet you, Olivia.
Please educate me. I know so little about this area, even though I grew up in London. It's scary.
We're in the George Inn, the historic inn in Southwark. The current building dates from the 1600s, and there's parts of it that dates from the 17th century, the 18th century. People have been drinking, eating, enjoying hospitality here for many, many years, and the historic connotations of this place are just incredible. It was basically a pub, and also you could actually stay here overnight. Southwark was the main centre of people who were arriving in London or leaving London, going to places like Canterbury, for example, on pilgrimages. The horses would stay here. You'd have a lot of stabling for horses. You could get yourself a nice fresh change of horse from the George Inn. So these were the forerunners of the modern-day motel and the modern-day hotel.
And if we leave here and we go out onto the street,
Yes.
where are we?
We're basically on Borough High Street, and we're right in the heart of historic Southwark. And then if you go a little bit further down, you're right on the River Thames as well. When the Romans arrived in the London area, that was 43 AD, they populated the north shore of the River Thames. But of course, having just conquered the entire Roman Empire, they were quite keen to see what was on the other side of the River Thames. So they built a wooden pontoon bridge, and they actually walked across here to Southwark.
So that bridge that they built as a pontoon bridge, would that be the sort of forerunner of modern-day London Bridge, or?
Yes, very much so. It was one of the first bridges to actually go across the River Thames. Eventually they decided to build one of stone because that seemed like quite a sensible idea. But this whole area of Southwark started to be built up by the Romans and then carried on from there. Bishops of Winchester had their headquarters here. And the reason that they did that was in the days before the Reformation, before the 16th century, they were very powerful statesmen as well as being clergymen. So they built themselves Winchester Palace, which is pretty much on the banks of the River Thames. And that was an enormous complex. They had a great hall, which you can still see to this day. You can still see the remnants of that. It had a cellar underneath where they stored all the wine. And in fact, there was actually a tunnel leading directly from the cellar right the way onto the banks of the Thames. One of the things that they got involved with, I have to say was quite interesting, was prostitution, believe it or not.
Wow.
The ladies, because they were actually under the auspices of the Bishops of Winchester, got known euphemistically as the Winchester geese. And the local church was St Saviour's, which has since become Southwark Cathedral. They weren't allowed to be buried in the churchyard. So the actual clergy who made money out of their activities...
That's horrific.
Yeah. So they got buried in a little patch of land. And it was only when they were building the Jubilee Line extension that they found remnants of bones that they then went and forensically examined and realised that these were the bones of very young women, often with syphilis. They often were the bones of babies in there, prematurely born babies. And they realised that this was the actual burial ground for the Winchester geese.
Wow.
That had previously been completely denied a proper Christian burial.
Could you tell us a little bit about the sort of crime and punishment in the area?
People who were bawdy or badly behaved, even the women in the area, got locked up in what was called the clink.
So it was a mixed prison?
It was a mixed prison. It was probably one of the first ever mixed prisons.
Wow.
Not that that's a good thing. This was a prison where people could be in there for quite some time. Unless you had friends on the outside, you could starve in there. Well, it wasn't all prisons and misery in this area. good old City of London band theatres at one time, so this is why they set up over here in Southwark. You basically had over here the Globe Theatre, you had the Swan and you had the Hoe, and of course Shakespeare made his name by performing plays over here. And indeed it's said that plays were actually Shakespearean plays were performed right outside here in the courtyard. You've still got the wonderful feeling of the old Southwark, and you can lose yourself down all the alleyways and beautiful places like this, like the George. And then right slap bang next to it, you've got the Shard, one of the most innovative buildings in the whole of Europe.
Just a short walk from the George is the old Operating Theatre Museum and Herb Garrett. And here you can learn about and see how they performed medical surgery throughout the 1800s, before the introduction of anaesthetic. I'm fascinated by this room that we're in. What can you tell us about it?
Well, this is the old operating theatre of St Thomas's Hospital. It dates back to 1822, and it's one of the few surviving operating theatres pre-anaesthetic, and also before we kind of know any knowledge of germs. It is in fact the oldest operating theatre in Europe. You can see it's mostly made out of woods, not the most cleanest of materials. You'd have had these stands here packed with medical students who were learning about surgery by watching operations taking place. You could have up to about 125 students crammed into this theatre. So all these students would be in their street clothes. Some of them could have bad colds, bad coughs, or could be sneezing, coughing into this room, feeling the air full of germs as well. So the key thing about surgery before anaesthetic is speed. To get the operations over as quickly as possible to minimise the pain of the patients. But from the records we have from this period of this theatre, so it's about 40 years, the survival rate we kind of think is about 1 in 3 people would have survived an operation. This operating table, it's one of our kind of prize exhibits here. This is original 19th century table. There's not many of these around at all.
Tell me about this. This looks fascinating.
Well, this is a original kind of 19th century amputation kit. What we have here is the amputation knives. Of course, we have the bone saw here, much like your common saw you get today to saw through the bone.
You thought that was for wood, didn't you?
Oh, I was hopeful.
You'd have the tourniquet, which is, of course, used to stop blood loss. And we have this instrument here, which are your bone nippers. And this is just to nip away any bits of the splintered bone. And you'd also have your tweezers here. These would just be there to just pull out the arteries, the veins of the leg as tight as possible, knotted together, then all kind of bundled up, and then it's going to be stitched with a fine piece of horsehair. The operating day here is a Friday, so they are very much fewer than today. And we don't have electricity at this time, so natural light is kind of crucial. Yeah. You've got the gas lamps here, which are going to provide a kind of backup kind of light. We'd have the surgeon, of course, and going back to the hygiene issue, the surgeon is going to have to protect his own clothes. It's almost kind of like a pride thing for the surgeon. You know, he's got his students here, and he's kind of showing off how many operations he's done. They're very skilled surgeons. There is this kind of misconception, I think, that surgery is kind of akin to butchery at this time. But the surgeons, you know, they are very well qualified, very kind of knowledgeable about surgery. But of course, dealing with the limitations about no anaesthetic, and also, you know, they don't know anything about germs. So people are dying of infection, but they don't know the reasons.
Next to the old operating theatre is the Herb Garret. The garret would have held all the ingredients necessary to make up all of the medicines required by the patients next door. And while not quite as bloody and gruesome, there are some equally interesting and disturbing methods used to aid the needy. The Herb Garret was run by the Chief Apothecary of St Thomas's Hospital. He was the Chief Resident Medical Officer responsible not only for compounding medicines, but for the diagnosis and the treatment for all non-surgical patients. He would have been responsible for paying for all the drugs needed by the hospital out of his own fees. And this was the way the governors used to manage and limit the cost of healthcare. And while a good idea in principle, there were complaints the apothecary made savings on the drugs bill at the expense of the medicines he made. The apothecary was the term used to describe what we would now refer to as a chemist or pharmacist, and St Thomas's employed its first apothecary in 1566 and its last in 1871, when the role of senior medical officer was transferred to the assistant physician. Our next stop is a famous Southwark restaurant right in the heart of Borough Market.
Well, I'm Stuart. I'm the head chef here at Roast. I've been here for about 5 years. Southwark's is sort of steeped in history. I love being right by the river. It's where all the sort of food produce was dropped off from the boat. It's brought into London through here. Walking through the market, you've got the traders unloading, you know, food's being delivered to the suppliers. You know, can walk through, see different vegetables and mushrooms, and the fish is being unloaded, and yeah, especially the oysters and stuff. Roast sets us apart because of where we are, the positioning. You know, to have any restaurant in the middle of a market, it's invaluable, really. You know, it's prime location. The front of the restaurant used to be from Covent Garden Flower Market. They were going to scrap it, and we managed to save it and rebuild it here and turn it into a restaurant. So it's already got a lot of history. We just want to promote good British seasonal food. Roast signature dish has to be the pork belly, by far. We do a rolled pork belly stuffed with onion and sage. Roast it, all the crackling is in a round piece on a plate with mashed potato and applesauce. If you're in the market, you're shopping, or you're local, you want to go to the theatre down the road, you're quite welcome to come to the bar. I can do some bar snacks, and we do some canapes. We usually have a singer or a jazz band on every night, even a Sunday. Just helps with the atmosphere of the restaurant. I love this area because I'm local. Got a lot of friends and family around here, so being here feels like home. I love coming to work, you know, and for that, it's got to be a bonus for anything, really. You come to work, cook good food, make people happy, go home to bed, up the road.
As you leave Roast, you immediately find yourself in the food paradise of Borough Market. Now administered by a charitable trust, there has been a market here since the 11th century. Open from Monday to Saturday, it's popular with tourists and locals, as well as chefs and restaurateurs, who not only come to sample and buy the local produce, but also for the unique atmosphere the market offers. And with its huge selection of tasty treats on offer, it's an easy and enjoyable place to consume more than the recommended daily calorie intake. This used to be called St Saviour's Church, and it was once the tallest structure in London. In 1666, it stood at 164 feet.
Good knowledge.
Do you know what it's called now?
I do, Derek. It's Southwark Cathedral.
Well done, you've done your homework. Let's go. Located at the heart of Southwark's Bankside area is the oldest cathedral church building in London, and there has been a church on this site since 606 AD. Although archaeological evidence suggests there was Roman pagan worship here well before that. Previously known as St Saviour's, the name changed to Southwark Cathedral with the creation of the Diocese of Southwark in 1905. Many visitors are drawn to the intricate high altar screen which depicts saints and people connected to the cathedral, and was originally erected by the Bishop of Winchester in 1520, and additional carvings were added at later periods. You can also find local residents that have been commemorated, such as William Shakespeare, who has a memorial window in his honour depicting characters from his plays, and his brother Edmund is also buried within the cathedral. And there is a chapel named after John Harvard, a Southwark resident who emigrated to the United States and who founded the famous university in Boston, Massachusetts, that bears his name today. The cathedral has a long tradition of serving the local community by offering refuge and help to every type of person. And today there are up to 5 services a day that offer guidance or just moments of reflection for residents, workers and visitors. If you're looking for a place to stay or a quick drink and a bite to eat in the area, why not try the Wellington Hotel on Waterloo Road?
My name's Mark Leeds and I'm the manager of the Wellington Hotel in Waterloo. And I was thinking that I'd only be here for 2 years, and those 2 gone into 13 years. The hotel is situated on the western end of Southwark, opposite Waterloo train station. Everyone asks about this mural on the ceiling. The man that actually painted the mural is the man up there with his arm raised up. His name is John Barton. He's actually an actor. He was in a show called Me and My Girl in the West End of London. Inside the mural, there's a few hidden characters of famous people. What I do, if they find they're really interested, then I ask them to find the hidden actors or actresses or people from history. The Wellington is a traditional English pub. We've got 25 bedrooms, all like boutique style. We show a lot of sport here. We do traditional food, and we've got a comprehensive wine menu. You know, you can't go wrong, really.
Several bridges have been built crossing the River Thames at the same point where today's London Bridge spans the river. Not to be confused with the nearby Tower Bridge, which sometimes mistakenly gets referred to as London Bridge. Of all the crossings over the River Thames, London Bridge perhaps has the longest history. The original bridges were wooden constructions and were in constant need of repair, often needing replacement after a short time. The latest version of the bridge, designed by Lord Holford, was opened by Queen Elizabeth in 1973 and crosses the river, joining the city to the more relaxed and creative Bankside.
Welcome on board. My name is Troy Richards. I'm the Chief Exec for the Golden Hind Trust. Golden Hind is a faithful replica. We classify it as an A-class replica. And the reason why she was built is because the original ship was the first maritime museum decreed by Queen Elizabeth I in 1581. Sadly, they didn't know how to maintain her, and she rotted away. Hence, Golden Hind 2 was completed in 1973.
And this is the same?
And this is the replica itself.
Brilliant.
Why is it called the Golden Hind?
Back in 1577, a fleet was sponsored by Queen Elizabeth I and a number of investors. One of them was Christopher Hatton. Now, during the voyage, Christopher Hatton sent Thomas Doughty to oversee his investment. He tried to take over the Golden Hind. Drake found out before the mutiny took place, beheaded Thomas Doughty. Now, because they're very superstitious, they believe if there is mutiny or about to be mutiny on board the ship, you must change the name of the ship. So hence Drake came up with this clever idea of naming the ship of Christopher Hatton's crest, which had this female deer, and hence it was called not the Pelican anymore, but the Golden Hind.
Oh, so the Pelican was the original name?
Pelican was its original name.
So tell us about the colours used on board, because it doesn't really look like a traditional English ship.
So when the ship set sail back in 1577, it set sail in English colours. Colours pale grey, green, and what we call today magnolia. Now, Drake used the Spanish colours as a means of disguising the ship. So black, yellow, and red, those are typical Spanish colours. Set sail in 1577, came back in 1580. The voyage lasted for 2 years and 10 months, almost
Nearly 3 years. Wow.
Very, very long voyage. They would have carried pigs, sheep, goats for milk, chickens.
And where would they have been kept?
And that would be on the same deck with the men, so on the gun deck. Comparing it with the Spanish ship, so the building next door is a perfect example of the size of a Spanish ship.
Wow, so you're telling me this boat would have taken on something as big as that?
Exactly. The main advantage inside was the speed. Even though there was hierarchy on board the ship, Drake tried to actually get them working together. There are officers and barber surgeons. The barber surgeons were the barber and the doctor at the same time. And the gunners are the one that effectively keep the ship mobile. They were the one that fought during battles, lift the anchors, lower the sails, etc. While they were at sea, they counted 80 men. So 80 men was on board the ship at the time.
You talked about the gunners. How many guns are on board the ship?
So on the gun deck itself, we had 14. They're not cannons, they're minions. Now the minions gun were designed to paralyze ships, so not to sink them, but to paralyze them. They would generally aim to shoot the mast, and if you damage a mast on a ship, then the ship will become paralyzed.
So it was a bit like piracy.
It's a bit like piracy, I would say, but the English see him as a privateer.
Ah, I see, not a pirate, a privateer.
He was the first captain to circumnavigate the world. Magellan, the Portuguese sailor, is actually credited to be the first captain to have done so. But Magellan didn't make it around the world, his ship did. Magellan died in the Philippines. So Drake was actually the first captain who have set sail from one country to another. Drake, in fact, died on board the Golden Hind from dysentery, just off the coast of Panama, and he was buried in a lead casket. The next few years actually are quite significant years for us. We'll be celebrating the 440 years of Drake circumnavigating the world.
Oh, fantastic.
So obviously a 3-year voyage. We will start our celebration in 2017 and carry on until 2020.
Troy, it's been absolutely fantastic and really interesting to be on board the Golden Hind. We wish you good luck. Thank you very much indeed, Troy.
Pleasure meeting you.